Good morning, and welcome to another exciting conversation with my wonderful chatters and me, and today a bit of the Bible, the book of Galatians, chapter 3. I'll be looking at the ESV translation, English Standard Version, I think. Let me see. Yes, English Standard. I got a listener already. Hi, Howard, in the chat room. Oh, darn, I need the lamp to see the keyboard, but it messes up the image. Well, it's an overcast day. Sorry about that. COPD is not fun. And I didn't have it until a certain vaccination, not what you're thinking. It was a DPT. I needed a tetanus booster, and all they had was the triple. Shut up, phone. The triple thing, diphtheria, pertussis, and tetanus. And I had a bad reaction to it. Well, anyway, it's mild. I have an emergency inhaler that I rarely use, but sometimes I have to cough. And don't tell me it's smoking. I've been smoking for 50 years, almost. No, more like 45, whatever. Didn't have this problem till that shot. Anyway, I'm like Joseph P. Farrell. I puff on cigarettes. It's more of a nervous habit than anything else. I do not suck the smoke down into my lungs. Just don't. If I tried it, I'd be hacking for several minutes because my lungs don't like that stuff. Another reason why I don't smoke pot. You're supposed to suck it down into your lungs. Ew. No. Anyway, I have popped up Galatians 3 because it's Paul's letter to the people of Galatia in what is now modern Turkey. And he's talking about faith versus works. Works being the works of the law. He was a Pharisee before he encountered Jesus on the road to Damascus. And the Pharisees were so particular and picky about following every law that... I turned off the sound on that phone. It's being evil. Anyway, it was ridiculous. I remember and he wanted a cup of coffee with milk in it, and the wife was saying, "Oh, I don't know what he can stir it with. Should I give him a fork or a spoon?" One was for the coffee, the other was for the milk. And Her husband said, plainly in the book of Romans, the first 7 or 8 verses. Well, James, on the other hand, Gentile Christians, the modern interpretation of works is things where you do good, acts of charity, kindness, gentleness, living an upright life, being honest and ethical and moral. And I don't think that's what James meant, but there was this kerfuffle where Paul had a slave, a servant, and the Jewish Christians were upset because Barnabas was not circumcised. Sorry, Howard, I know seems I don't see any hourglass of doom. But knowing that if other people saw him doing that, they might lose their faith, he did not eat in the pagan temple. He simply bought meat, and maybe it was offered to an idol and maybe not. Let's get this thing off. That's better. All right. He said, you really shouldn't make a show of it's okay to eat this meat, it's just meat, and idols are not real. The pagan gods are not God. Wow. Anyway, back to faith versus works. ESV, I'm flipping over to that. And since knowing that God would justify the Gentiles by in you shall all the nations be blessed. So then, those who are of faith are blessed along with Abraham, the man of faith. Now, this should tell us something important. The Jews, the descendants of Abraham, all of them, of both Jacob and Esau, of Isaac. You know, you got Abraham, his son Isaac, and then Jacob and Esau, and quite possibly Abraham's other son. But that is not the topic today. The point is that all the nations that God divorced in Deuteronomy 32 and assigned them to lesser gods, and I have to talk about that. Our word God with a big G is God, but these little gods, they're not God. They aren't really gods in the sense that we understand the word today. They're just flunkies. They work for God. And they didn't do a very good job with the nations. Well, anyway, we're all invited back into God's kingdom through Abraham. And the Jews, the Israelites, the Hebrews, the descendants of Abraham, were an example to us of how to lead a good life and worship God and reject these pagan wannabe gods. Are fine. Verse 10, for it is written, cursed be everyone who does not abide by all things written in the book of the law and do them. Now, I'm assuming that's the law of Moses, but to my mind, it's really the law of God is the 10 Commandments. It's hard even to abide by the 10 Commandments. For as Jesus said, if you just think about having an affair with someone you aren't married to, if you just want your neighbor's wife, that's a sin, even if you don't do it. Verse 11, now it is evident that no one is justified quoting, come on. Come on, I have to see which footnote to look at. D. He's quoting, he's quoting another verse in this chapter, I think. I can't find it. Anyway, the quote is, the righteous shall live by faith. And the footnote says, Galatians 3:11. Oh, it's not where it came from. It's just an alternate translation. The one who by faith is righteous will live. Verse 12, but the law is not of faith. Rather, the one who does it, like Jesus on the cross. Back to the text. So that in Christ Jesus, the blessing of Abraham might come to the Gentiles, so that we might receive the promised Spirit through faith. Okay, that's enough. Spirit. Well, when Jesus was resurrected, he told his disciples he had to leave again. He had to go to the Father, but he would send his Spirit to dwell in us. Not with us, in us. To guide us. And so I wonder if my flashes of intuition, which have often saved me from disaster, except when I didn't pay attention to them, maybe those are of the Spirit. Now, I'm not getting chatters, so I'm wondering if there's a problem after all. But my connection seems fine. Nothing wrong with it. Shoot, I'm nothing without my chat room. Nothing. I'm cleaning the cache. There, here we go. Maybe that'll help. Hi, Theobald. I have a new chatter. I need the light to see my keyboard. I used to do touch typing, but the computer keyboard is really quite different from a typewriter. Cousins Cove in Western Jamaica. Theobald Jamson, good to see you here. I don't think I've seen you before. Well, I just went through a few verses from Paul's letter to the Galatians in the New Testament about how, well, Abraham believed God, and God took his faith for righteousness, and he told Abraham, through you shall all the nations be blessed. Howard's still here. Good. My little counter says I have no listeners, but I have 2 people in chat. But that's usual. YouTube has glitches. Well, anyway, that means that if we have faith in God, as Abraham did, we can be adopted into the fold, into God's people, the descendants of Abraham, by faith, not by works. And I'm sorry, I don't remember where James said it, but he said, faith without works is dead. James, the brother of Jesus, wanted people to obey the law. That's the book of Deuteronomy, I believe. Anyway, it's the law of Moses. Or, to my mind, that phone is driving me crazy. I don't want to turn it off entirely, but I can't seem to turn off the sound. Anyway, it's at least the 10 Commandments. Let's see. How about do not disturb? That might work. I got a text that I had to answer real quick. So, we can't obey the law. Even if we think, oh, I want that guy's car, I want that woman's husband. That's coveting. It's in the 10 Commandments. You don't covet your neighbor's stuff. You just don't. But we do. So we're doomed by the law. Time for another cigarette to puff on. I have some Dunhill Red. I found a local store that sells them, but they're rather expensive. So at the moment, it's Camel filters. And in the great state of California, you cannot get menthol cigarettes or any flavor. Now, I can kind of understand the fruit flavor ban because that might appeal to children. But menthol? Give me a break. The reason seems to be that people of color prefer menthol, so they'll be discouraged from smoking if they can't get their menthol cigarettes. Let's see. Theobald says Luke 17:6 seems like we all fail the test. Faith as small as a mustard seed. Okay, let's look up Luke 17:6. I'm using the ESV, the English Standard Version, because it's easier to read aloud, but I do really love the poetry of the King James. Okay, I'll start on verse 5. The apostles said to the Lord, increase our faith. You the mulberry tree. Be uprooted and planted in the sea, and it would obey you. Yep. Well, I think we all have questions. The most faithful among us has questions sometimes. That doesn't mean we lost our faith. It's just our search for knowledge, our desire for certainty. Uh-oh, the rain isn't supposed to come till Wednesday, but I just heard a gust of wind that, oh, and it's foggy. Ugh, really foggy. It isn't quite down on the ground here, but it will be soon. Life in the mountains. Search for knowledge has corrupted us. Yes, if you understand, especially in the book of First Enoch, the one that was actually written long time ago, like before Christ. There are two other books of Enoch, but they're from the Middle Ages. The book of First Enoch tells us the Watchers gave people forbidden knowledge, and it was things like teaching women how to use makeup and perfume for sexual seduction, and teaching men how to make weapons for war and crime. Stuff like that. Oh, and of course, pharmacology, pharmaceuticals. That's actually a word for poison, originally. Pharmacopoeia, that's the word I wanted. Pharmacy will do. How to make drugs. Mm-hmm. Right. You bet. Yep. In the garden, the serpent, which probably was Lucifer, or anyway, an angel, although angel is such a poor word for what those entities are. A shining serpentine deceiver. If you listen to Dr. Michael S. Heiser, he passed away recently, but he's all over YouTube for free. He goes over the word in Hebrew and the various definitions and uses of that word. The Nachash. I can do that sound because I studied German, got a degree in the German language, but this is Hebrew. He's basically a shining serpentine deceiver. He persuaded Eve to eat the fruit, and then, according to Milton, which might not be your best source, John Milton's Paradise Lost, Adam had already lost his first wife, Lilith, when she ate the fruit. But when Eve ate the fruit, Adam decided he would rather live in hell with Eve than in heaven without her. In any case, they both ate the fruit of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. And then they made fig leaves because they realized they were naked. And when they hid from God because they were naked, God said, "Who told you you were naked?" Uh, Theobald, you're onto something. Yes, we are stuck in the matrix. The knowledge that we've acquired is really not good. Um, we know how to deceive now. We learned from the deceiver in the garden. Yeah, I think it's raining now. Life on the mountain. It's definitely a little windy. Strong gust here and there. I don't think you can hear it, but I can. So our entire world is a deception, a simulation. It isn't quite real. I have this memory. It isn't, strictly speaking, a dream. I was awake when I had this vision, and I think it's a memory of waiting to be born on this earth. And there were 6 of us, 3 female, 3 male, and nobody wanted to be born into that family. But I was persuaded to do it. And boy, I'll tell you, Dad was, a good man, but often unavailable physically or emotionally. He worked long hours. He was very serious about taking care of his family, but he didn't know what was going on while he wasn't there with Mom, the devil's sister. Long, sad story. I have PG version. I don't think I'll ever discuss the R rated version. Let's see. Theobald says Philip K. Dick was the first person to speak publicly of the simulation and what is now called the Mandela effect in 1977 in Metz, France. Yes, and they thought he was nuts. And now all the people who thought he'd lost his mind have embraced it. Now, Phil thought it was a computer generated simulation, but don't think of the laptop sitting on your desk or the desktop in your office or your phone or your tablet. Think of a gigantic universe wide, lost the word, quantum computer. With no real hardware, just ions traveling what through space, which is not empty and is not a vacuum. Although the media like to tell us that space is an emptiness, a vacuum with nothing in it. Not true. Oh, Valis, the Most High AI. Yeah. Well, Phil dabbled in Gnosticism, but he didn't really understand it. Gnosticism was a way of going back to paganism. Remember, it was the Watchers, it was the serpent who gave us knowledge, and it wasn't good for us. Gnostics, well, they think they have gnosis, 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 knowledge, and that it's divine and good and all that stuff. No, it isn't. They're worshiping pagan gods. They believe in this one impersonal being as the true God who created these other gods. I think it's 7 pairs. It varies. Gnosticism is not all together on this. Different systems of Gnosticism have different numbers of these emanations, and they come in pairs, one male, one female. One of them is Jesus, and he's the lowest on the scale, the least of them. And his wife, Sophia, which means wisdom. Oh, and by the way, Christ is a separate being from Jesus. Long story. Anyway, Sophia creates the God of the Bible, and that God is evil. That God made the earth, and he made a bunch of archons to help him rule humanity. This is what Gnostics worship. They're pagans. Funny about silent G and silent K? Yeah, well, it's because the Greeks pronounced it and the English, mostly English, who learned ancient Greek in order to translate it, because they had a lot of scientific knowledge, the ancient Greeks. Well, the English couldn't be bothered to pronounce something that difficult, like gnosis. Often they left off the G and just wrote Nosis. The English, in their colonial times, couldn't be bothered to call a colony what the people who lived there called it. For example, Burma is actually Myanmar. Oh, that's difficult to pronounce. Let's call it Burma. And so on and so forth. Nanotechnology. Language is nanotechnology. Could be, but it's immaterial. If I know something, it happens to be in my brain, I think. It's also in my mind, and the mind is immaterial. And if I tell you something, okay, that knowledge is carried on waves of compression in the air, but the knowledge is not made of air. If I write it down on a piece of paper, the knowledge is not the paper and ink. If I make a phone call and tell someone about it, that person can go on the internet and send it in a tweet, or get on the cell phone and send it in a text message. None of those things is the knowledge. The knowledge has no material existence. We simply use materials to transmit knowledge. If you ever have the time and inclination, you ought to read First Enoch, at least the first 38 chapters. Relax, the chapters are short. About how the watchers, or angels, bad angels, corrupted mankind with this knowledge, which they traded for sex and reproduction. And they had children who were giants. And Genesis 6 verse 4, I think. The same were mighty men, men of renown. It doesn't really say renown, it says bad reputation. Like Goliath. Howard has read it. Now, in Genesis chapter 6, there's no details about what this is with the sons of God who saw the daughters of man and married them and had children, because in that time, the Second Temple period, before Jesus, right before him, the Second Temple, the one that was destroyed in 70 AD. Well, First Enoch is probably between 100 and 200 BC. Anyway, the people of that time knew the story. Now, Moses wrote Genesis way back, about a little over 300 years after Abraham was called. They'd left Egypt and they were headed toward the Holy Land, but in the wilderness. Now, maybe Moses himself didn't write it, but I don't care. I'm not that kind of scholar. Somebody wrote it. Probably around 2000 BC. They knew the story. They were not that far gone from the flood. So there was no need to write down the details. Well, hi, Gangstarect Films. Let's see. Welcome to the chat. I keep wondering if that's a pun on Star Trek. Gangstarek. I liked the original series. I kind of liked the next generation Star Trek. I didn't like the first movie, but I did like the ones with the planet that was terraformed, and then Spock died and was resurrected on that planet. Long story. But the only movie that I really liked was a remake of an episode from the original Star Trek, or sort of a sequel to it. The Wrath of Khan, Khan. We don't pronounce the H. It's probably really something like Khan, but Americans and Englishmen don't go around talking like that. With the guttural sounds, which happen to be a lot softer than the way we speak, but a little more difficult to achieve. So anyway, yeah, we're in some kind of simulation. I mean, after all, most of what we call solid matter really is the empty space between the electrons and the nucleus of the atom. I can't remember where I got this, but it was a real scientist, a physicist or astrophysicist. If the nucleus of the hydrogen atom were the size of a golf ball, the electron in orbit around it would be 3 miles away. So if space really is empty, most of what we experience here, including our own bodies, most of it is empty space. But once again, space is not truly empty. It has been established that if you want to take one square, well, I'm not square, 1 cubic centimeter of what we call empty space and bring its temperature down to absolute zero, all the energy and all the matter in our entire universe would not be enough to achieve that. It means that that cubic centimeter of empty space isn't empty at all. At the very least, it's full of energy. And while we're on the topic, sort of, did you know that our planet is really inside the sun? The solar wind extends beyond Pluto. The heliosphere, um, the very rarefied atmosphere of the sun, extends beyond the planet Pluto, a dwarf planet. It's lost its status. Do I care? They've actually found a couple of larger dwarf planets beyond Pluto, bigger than Pluto. And by the way, science is not established. When I was in elementary school, they told us that Pluto was shaped like a potato. Now we have images of Pluto. It's round like a ball. Okay, Theodore says that's what they do with a quantum chip. They make the coldest spot in the universe, freeze photons almost into slow mo, but they don't reach absolute zero. They just get very, very cold. Computing isn't going to work, at least not in the way they want. It's going to regularly perform the unexpected. So watch out. If someone starts up a quantum computer, it could start all kinds of havoc and mayhem. And by the way, you wreak havoc. You don't wreck it, it is wreck. I dropped something. It's WREAK, wreak. It's an obsolete word, but when the phrase wreak havoc was first used, it was a long time ago. It's an obsolete word for work, WORK. You work havoc, you wreak it. Oh, they want to open a portal in another dimension. They're idiots. They're freaking idiots. A dimension is not a place, it's a direction in which you can travel. We can go up and down, side to side, forward and backward. Those are dimensions. And time is a dimension. We don't need to open it up, we're in it. We happen to be unable to change our course. We go forward in time, we can't go backward, we can't even go sideways in time. And these other dimensions they're talking about are not dimensions, they're other universes that are separated from ours and have different physical laws. And by the way, what we call the laws of nature or physical laws, they're not laws. They're simply the conclusions we have drawn from observation. For example, if an apple falls off a tree, it falls to the ground. It doesn't rise up into the clouds. That's a law of nature, but it's really just our observation of what happens. Yeah, they're seeking, they could destroy the entire universe by doing that, by the way. If this other universe seeps into ours, leaks, or goes, phew, we're done, we're toast. All the stars and planets and galaxies and nebulas and even the black holes could not exist if gravity had a different value, if the cosmological constant had a different value. The cosmological constant is a term that Albert Einstein coined for the force that stops our universe from collapsing into one gigantic black hole. Gravity wants to pull everything together, but this force that pushes things apart is the cosmological constant, which allows stars and planets and galaxies and so forth to exist without going shoop into one gigantic black hole. Gangster Cat says Phil had an impression, however, to communicate with some certain Thomas from ancient Rome, like for another dimension. Not really. It was more that he had a connection. He might have been Thomas, or he might have been a genetic descendant of Thomas. And the connection was mental and therefore immaterial, so it did not depend upon the laws of physics. Knowledge is not matter. It's something else. It's ethereal, if you will. And they were trading knowledge. I sometimes wonder if that Thomas might not have been doubting Thomas, who said about the resurrected Jesus, I'll believe it when I put my hand into the wound in his side, where he was pierced with a spear. Well, when we get that scene where Thomas says, "Oh, Jesus, I believe," it does not say that he stuck his hand into the wound. He knew Jesus the minute he saw him. Oh, and by the way, kind of shoveling back to, or pedaling back to, one of the comments in the chat room, when Jesus told Peter, I have to go to Jerusalem and die. Peter says, oh, no, no, you can't do that. And Jesus says, get thee behind me, Satan. He isn't saying that Peter is this angel named Satan who's bad and evil, like Lucifer. It's Satan with a small s, the accuser, basically a prosecuting attorney who accuses people in God's court. And not necessarily a bad guy, it's just his job. An accuser and in some ways a tempter, tempting Jesus to avoid dying. Oh, Howard, the double slit experiment. Yes. Now sometimes it uses electrons and sometimes it uses a beam of light. Either way, it's electromagnetic radiation. and you have an opaque screen that it cannot get through, but there are two slits, two openings. And you send the beam of light or electrons. Either way, it sometimes acts as if it's a particle and sometimes acts as if it's just a beam, not a particle, a wave, a sine wave or a compression wave. Sine waves are kind of like an S curve. A compression wave is boom, open, boom, open. Sound is a compression wave. A wave on the ocean is a sine wave. And by the way, for the most part, when you see waves on the ocean, the water is not moving, at least not very far. The wave is moving through the water. Anyway, so now they say light is made of wavicles because they can act like particles or waves. Oh, wow. I've been going almost an hour. I do want to save some of my internet connection for tomorrow morning. But you guys are in the chat are really fascinating. You have a great deal of knowledge. And I'm honored that you share it with me. Okay, Theobald says the double slit experiment does not account for photons reflecting off the side of the slit, creating the diffusion pattern. Ah, diffusion. Uh, an example of a diffusion pattern is the rainbow. Another example is that I can't see through the fog. The light is diffused, spread out in all directions. Oh, Howard is going to come back in a few minutes. He has to take a phone call. That's okay, because it's time for me to take a couple minutes to recycle some coffee. Let's see, Gangster Wreck. While reading Valis, I realized my name is Thomas and I was born exactly the month Phil had his experiences with Thomas from another time. I don't remember which month he first talked to Thomas. I do know that his visions began on the second day of March in 1974. Ah, communicating. Okay, hang on. I will be right back. Don't go away. Just gotta recycle the coffee. Ah, dum de dum. Dum de dum de dum. Dum de dum. Dum de dum de dum. Dum de dum. Dum de dum de dum. Dum de dum, dum de dum de dum, dum de dum, dum de dum de dum. Okay, it is raining. I can hear the rain hitting the bathroom window. So it's a good thing that I brought in my laundry from the clothesline yesterday. I had one communication with Phil after he died. We met in a library, like a Victorian library, the kind a wealthy person would, or a scholar would have in his house. And it had a large a large heavy dining table with a bowl of fruit, and I think, yeah, a bottle of wine. And Phil and I were sitting in chairs next to each other. No one else was there. And I reached for the fruit, and he told me, "No, don't eat that. It's only for people here, and you don't belong here." And he said that my mourning for him was disturbing his peaceful life in this new world. It was not heaven. But anyway, we had a conversation, and then he went out the door into the garden, and he was walking with a philosopher. At the moment, I can't remember which one, but someone from the early Renaissance. And they were having a conversation while walking through the garden, and that ended the vision. It was about a year, I think, probably to the day, a year after he passed away officially. The doctors insisted he was brain dead for about a week before they finally pulled the plug. Had to get permission from the family. On, of all days, the second day of March in 1982. His visions began on the second day of March in 1974. Um, Sorry, I got itchies. I've had terrible itchies ever since I got the jab in 2021. Yes, gangster, it is interesting. I'm disappointed, by the way, in the Philip K. Dick robot. Surely they could have found a voice that sounds more like him, but in any case, it's creepy. Oh, gangster has a PhD in philosophy, a piled higher and deeper. I have a mere master's degree in English literature. But first, I studied foreign languages, got a degree in German. Then I studied communications and got a degree in public relations. But I had started out studying pre med. I just couldn't face the requirement to learn calculus. I just can't go there. Might someday on my own independently learn calculus, but the classes require so much of your time that your other studies suffer and your life suffers. Uh, well, not everybody could afford to go to college. I went to what we call a junior college, a 2 year Fullerton College, and it did cost money, but I got a state grant to buy textbooks, and it wasn't too bad paying for the classes. Each course I took was $15, and I was taking 4 and sometimes 5 classes at the same time. So I had to work and earn money to pay for school, and I ended up getting those student loans. Phil did not have a lot of money, so the child support was really not much. I was pretty much on my own. This was long before Blade Runner. So, anyway, yeah, I got through 2 years with relatively low expenses for school. But then when I went to the 4 year college, Chapman, before they sold out and became a university, which is all about money and prestige. Well, anyway, I got a really great scholarship. It cost me $600 total for each term. They didn't have semesters, they had terms. Even then, in 1980, that was not much money. Now, when I did but I did get more student loans, and Phil was able to pay a little more in child support. I didn't take him to court, we just made an agreement. But for the master's degree, that's the one that killed me. I had to get all kinds of loans and work 2 jobs while raising my son. And at that point, Phil had passed away, and the lawyers for his estate were refusing to pay any child support at all. So I had to go to court once a year to get a court order. Anyway, I ended up borrowing a total of about $15,000 in student loans. And over the years, I had made payments whenever I could. I graduated with the master's in 1990. And by 2015, when I had a Chapter 13 bankruptcy, no, it wasn't even 2015. I think it was 2010 or 12. Anyway, a mere 20 to 25 years later, my $15,000 in student loans had grown to $35,000, even though I'd made payments. I refinanced my home to pay that off so I could successfully complete the bankruptcy. Chapter 13, you pay your bills, but nobody can take your stuff. Well, then this was the aftermath of the 2008 crash. I lost my home. I have a home now. I kind of own it. The bank really owns it. Uh, I don't believe in paying off student loans the way the government wants to do it. I paid my loans and I paid for them with my house, my home where I lived. Must have been 2010, thereabouts. I had filed bankruptcy in '08. I don't remember how long. I might have had 5 years. So that would take me into 2012 or 13. But I paid my loans. I don't get anything. And yes, we should help people with a heavy load of student debt. But the problem is that it just encourages colleges and universities to keep on charging outrageous sums of money for tuition. And they don't need that money, that much money, to cover their costs and then pay their professors. They're using it to build their wealth and prestige. Done with phone call. Hi, Howard. I was just ranting about student loans and the problem that it simply enriches colleges and universities. They use the if the students can get their loans paid off, the colleges and universities will raise their tuition even higher. And a lot of it goes into a fund that they just let sit, gathering interest. And a lot of it goes to administrators, not teachers. Professors are terribly underpaid for the most part. I have experience with that. Or they hold these events, these galas, these basically parties for donors to encourage them to give more to the university so they can have more wealth, power, prestige, and a huge fund of savings drawing interest. Most colleges and universities could survive at least 10 years if they set tuition at zero. Oh, and the textbook deal is often a racket. When you enroll in a class, the professor tells you you have to buy this book, and it's usually a book that the professor wrote. He gets paid royalties when you buy his book. And he'll say, well, you have to have the fifth edition, the third or fourth won't do. And the fifth edition might have, a couple of words changed here and there and a different photograph in it. But they don't want you to get by with used books, which are cheaper because they don't get royalties on used books. Yeah, big racket. And frankly, all my degree in English literature qualified me to do was teach English, which I did for 12 years, while also working for a secretarial service. And I had a devil of a time paying my bills on what I earned. I slept in my car for 2 years because my son made a baby he wasn't prepared to support, so I had to help him. Well, my granddaughter is a lovely woman now, 30 years old. No complaints. Yeah, so after 2 years of sleeping in my car, and by the way, if you must sleep in your car, well, I don't know now, but my 1980 Honda Accord, 80, 86, something like that. The driver's seat folded back completely. It reclined to where it was flat, and I could lie down on it with my head on the back seat and sleep comfortably. But after 2 years of that, I still could not come up with deposits for an apartment, so I rented a room. Now I actually own the home I live in, but it's really difficult because of not the mortgage so much as property taxes. They're outrageous. Even with Prop 13 in California that says they can't increase your taxes by more than so much every year. Well, every year they increase them to the maximum that the law allows, and then they keep playing little tricks. It ain't easy to live in California, but I don't have an escape plan. I was born and raised here. Born in Culver City, high school in Anaheim, uh, college in Fullerton and Orange. And here I am in the San Bernardino Mountains of Southern California's inland empire. Because of a vision, a series of dreams in which I had to get to the mountains because of some terrible disaster down in the valley, in all the flatter lands of Southern California, a huge disaster. That's really why, well, I always wanted to be in the mountains, but that's really the motivation for me to finally do it and move up here. And I was able to get my home because I had a small inheritance from Granny. It would have gone to Mom, but Mom had passed away. So it was split among her four children, and I'm one of the four. Ah, oh boy. It's, life is weird. Michigan, Howard? Probably, I don't know. It's awfully far north. Oh, if Newsom runs for president, every time he pops up on one of the news reports, which I watch only on YouTube, I can just see his eyes turning red and horns growing out of his head. A court has um, told him he cannot ban our gas appliances. He actually made an executive order to that you can't have gas appliances in your home. You have to switch to electric by, I don't know, is it 2030 or 33, something like that? And a court struck it down, but I'm sure he'll appeal. I cannot convert to electric. This is a mountain cabin. I think it was built in 1930, might have been earlier. It does not have the high voltage outlets required for an electric stove or an electric heater or water heater. And it would run thousands of dollars to convert my home to high voltage. Not only the wiring, which would require pulling the walls apart, but also the switch box, where if there's a surge, it pops the switch to protect your appliances. It doesn't have the connection for a 220 high voltage outlet. I think Europe and England have the right idea that all their wiring is 220 or 210. Not much difference there. Um, but ours is 120, and it's usually really 110. Oh, Michelle Obama might run. That would be interesting. Well, I think Biden has kind of claimed the Democrat nomination. We'll see. I'm really concerned about Trump, but he's probably better than what we've got. DeSantis doesn't seem to be running. I'll bet you he's waiting for 2028, just building up his image and popularity and presence in people's minds for now. But I think he's very happy taking care of Florida for the moment. I don't know. Oh, and there's Robert Kennedy Jr. Now, he's interesting. Very interesting. I want to know more about him. His one major handicap, since elections tend to be popularity contests, is his voice. He has a condition that affects his vocal cords, and his voice is just not a Kennedy voice. But I guess that's okay. But it might hurt him. He sounds like someone with a very bad sore throat. I don't know who I'll vote for. I don't even know who's getting the nominations. But if it's Hillary, no way, Jose. Not after I saw that video of Benghazi where our diplomat was tortured and killed and she laughed. No way, Jose. That woman's evil. Yeah, Donald Trump, maybe. You see, there's a cult of personality building around him. And that worries me. Not himself so much as the people who are the opposite of never Trump. They're nobody but Trump. He does seem to be a good man. He can be offensive. But when I was growing up, we had LBJ, Lyndon Baines Johnson. He wasn't, well, he was too smart to be crude and obnoxious on camera. But what those close to him said about how he behaved, not only in private, but in meetings with his staff, oh, crude, obnoxious, gross, disgusting. He would confer with his underlings while he was sitting on the toilet taking a dump. That's really beyond the pale. I mean, with them in person, we didn't have cell phones. The phone was either sitting on your desk or bolted to the wall. And I had to ask Mom's permission to use it. Yeah, Kennedy, I don't know. Yeah, on the other hand, almost anyone would be better than what we have. If the economy is so wonderful, how come people line up at the food giveaways and they run out before everyone is served? How come young mothers are begging for diapers and formula? How come even those with jobs have trouble making the rent? Well, I think people get all their news from the legacy media. They, for example, say Trump is racist, but they don't have a clip of Trump saying anything racist. They say Trump hates women, but they don't show clips of him doing anything hateful toward women. They just keep saying it. It's like Hitler's propagandist. I forget which one it was. What's his name? We'll call him what's his name. The bigger the lie, the more likely people will believe it, especially if you say it loud enough and often enough. I don't know what Trump is like in private. Maybe he's an asshole. Many of our politicians have been assholes and still done a good job. Oh, yeah. Well, you see, back on 9/11 and the Iraq War, the second Iraq War, by the way, which was really an escalation of the first. Both of them, one under Bush daddy and the other under Bush son. Uh, my brother asked me, "What do you think this means? That we're going to war in Iraq?" And I said then, apparently, if these elites want their globalist, their globalism and a worldwide government, the United States will have to lead and not follow. And it's becoming more and more apparent that if we become weak, we have to turn to the few allies we have left and join something like the European Union. We're already importing things we could very easily make here cheaper and better. We're sending money to countries that hate us, billions of dollars. We're sending troops to places you'll never know about, well, maybe in 20 years, like the secret wars down in South America. I knew about the one in Argentina because I knew a veteran who had PTSD after what he saw when he was deployed in Argentina. Goebbels. Thank you, gangster. Goebbels was Hitler's propagandist. Oh, God, I got itchies. It was a reaction to a vaccination, and it won't go away. Ukraine support. Oh, Lord. Now we're talking politics. Ukraine, yes. Zelensky, no. He started massing troops along the border with Ukraine and between Ukraine and Crimea. Yes, Russia seized Crimea back from poor little Ukraine. Ukraine happens to be outside of Russia, the largest country geographically in Eastern Europe. But Crimea was given to Ukraine by the Soviet Union and very recently. And Ukraine decided that the Russian Navy could not use the port at Sebastopol, where they had an agreement when the Soviet Union gave them Crimea. They had an agreement that the Russian Navy or the Soviet Navy would use the port at Sebastopol, and it's important. It's their only warm water port. They used to have one in Romania, but Romania joined NATO. They joined NATO. After Reagan, President Reagan actually made a deal with the Soviet Union that if they took down the Berlin Wall and allowed the Soviet Union to break apart, NATO would not encroach on Eastern European nations that had been satellites of the Soviet Union. And what did they do? Oh, they make all these deals with Poland. Romania joins NATO, and Poland joins NATO, and all this stuff. Do you realize that in the ports off the Pacific coast of Russia, they ice up in the winter? They would have to lift their ships out of the water and put them on land every winter so the ice wouldn't crush them. And even moving them like that would cause all kinds of damage. Or they would have to find a friendly nation that would allow them to use the port. If they don't have Sebastopol, their port in Crimea. So after Russia took back Crimea, Zelensky had his troops start lining up on the border. Oh, but Russia was unprovoked. They just invaded for no reason. You know what they say about uh, people who don't know their history? Shortly before our Civil War, Russia went into the Crimean War to kick out the Ottoman Turkish rulers from Ukraine and Crimea. The Ottoman Turks had invaded and taken over. I always want to say Baltic Sea. It's the Black Sea, is like a highway between Turkey and Ukraine and Romania and other nations. And it was Russian blood around 1860. I'm not sure of the exact date. And England and France sided with Turkey. They were allies. England has a terrible history of needless warfare. For example, the Napoleonic Wars. Napoleon actually started only one war against a province in Spain that had violated a treaty. All the other wars were started by England against Napoleon and by Russia against Napoleon. Yeah, Crimea was Turkish, but only because the Turks invaded. And took over. At this time, Crimea is mostly Russian, but Putin miscalculated. He thought that the ethnic Russians of Ukraine, who are at least half the population, he thought they would side with him. They didn't. They said, no, we're Ukrainian now. Yeah, we speak Russian, but we're Ukrainian. Russia has no business taking Ukraine. They want it because it's wealthy. The farms in Ukraine could feed the whole world if they weren't busy making war. And by the way, the farms in California's Central Valley could feed the whole world twice over if we didn't have such stupid politicians. Taking the water that used to water the farms to feed big cities instead of building reservoirs to catch the rain. And then restricting the use of fertilizer. Well, hello, Niche. I'm getting ready to sign off, actually. I've been on for an hour and 38 minutes. And I didn't want to delve into politics, but here we are. I hope I don't get a strike from YouTube. But man, I don't like Putin. He's evil. Russia should get out of Ukraine. But I don't know what we should do about it. I think sending money to Zelensky is not helping because he's corrupt. He's becoming wealthy instead of equipping his soldiers. Well, thank you, Howard. He says it's nice to know my thoughts. Nicay. When I first saw Niche, I thought Japanese, but not with that spelling. Hindu, I think. Indian. Come on. Yeah, me too, Howard. I'd like to leave my granddaughter a decent America. What we need to do more than anything is pray. Oh, I guessed right, Niche. Yes, India. I'm in Southern California. I did something weird. I'm in Southern California on a mountain. I'm in the San Bernardino Mountains, which is an arm of the Sierra Nevada. All right. Come on, evil computer. There, here. Our tallest peak is about 8,000 feet, maybe a little more. And the bighorn sheep have been seen again in our mountains. Nobody had seen one in decades. We see bears all the time. And sometimes we see little mule deer. And of course, we see skunks and raccoons and possums and owls and ravens and all kinds of birds all the time, and chipmunks and squirrels. It's time for Tora to say hi to her adoring fans. Here you go. Say hello, Tora. Yes. Oh, she squinted. Squints are kitty kisses. Yeah, such a good girl. That's my pretty kitty. Tora's a good. Oh man, she must weigh 20 pounds. She's huge. She was a little kitty when I got her. Huh. When did I get you? I think it was 2 years ago. Well, not quite 2 years because it was September, something like that. Oh, and when she appears on camera, she requires a reward. So let's get the treats. There, here you go. Good girl. My other cat, Sweetie, is hiding because that's what she does. She's still feral. I've had her for almost 16 years and she still thinks I'm a cat murderer. But boy, does she come running for treats when she wants them. Oh, it's night in India. Well, it's 9:45 in the morning here on Monday. On your side of the world, it might be almost Tuesday, or it might be Tuesday. I'm not sure about India, but in Australia, it's Tuesday, 10 p.m. Okay, so still Monday. Okay. Um, it's almost 10 in the morning here, so that's a difference of 12 hours. You must be halfway around the world from here, since there are 24 hours in a day. Well, welcome to our chat room and discussion. Um, Oh, I got itchy so bad. Oh, wow. And it's foggy and raining outside. I'm glad I brought in my clothes off the clothesline yesterday. Sometimes I leave them overnight to get fresh air and to be sure that they're completely dry, but I brought them in. I can't stand the itchies, I'm sorry. It's an adverse reaction to a certain jab. Oh, Nishi, I'm living in a small town. Haryana. Hmm. Well, I'm delighted to have you here. Uh, But I am going to have to sign off pretty soon. I need to get some other things done today. But if you watch the replay, I talked about chapter 3 of Galatians, Paul's letter to the Galatians in the New Testament, and how important it is to have faith. And I'm going to try to remember every time I come on YouTube to urge everyone to pray for your country, for your world, for your people, because it seems that everything everywhere is getting worse. I'll be okay because I live in a community where we help each other. We all do what we can to make sure everybody's okay. Nobody goes hungry. Broken things get fixed. Yards get cleaned up, and so on and so forth. It's a marvelous place to be, where you know your neighbors. I don't always know their names, but I know them. We see each other at the post office and the grocery store and so forth. Not too tough now, but we were buried under 6 feet of snow for a month. That was unusual. That sort of thing is like it happens once every 50 years. And at my elevation, we usually get 2 or 3 inches of snow. We got 6 feet, and up higher they got as much as 12 feet. And now it's melting, so people down below in the valley are having trouble with flooding because California does not have good water management. Most of our rain and melted snow water runs off into the ocean. For example, in 1979, a project to build a reservoir to hold rainwater and runoff was approved. This is 2023, and they have not even started construction of the dam that was approved in 1979. That's California. They keep telling us we're in a drought. Well, yeah. Oh, you want my birthday? It's in June. I'm a summer baby and a Gemini. I don't know how astrology works in India, but Gemini is the twins. Oh, you can see Torah in the background. Yes. Yes, that's Torah. Such a pretty kitty. She's half bobcat, or, well, part bobcat. Not sure if it's half or a quarter. November, Scorpio or Sagittarius? Sagittarius. The Archer. Yes. Well, unfortunately, I have to get going, but it's been very nice chatting with all of you. I'm telling you, without my chat room and all the wonderful people in it, I'm nothing. I'm just kind of rambling on YouTube. And you guys bring up the topics that really matter. So once again, let's pray for our families, our communities, our cities, counties, states, nations, and the whole world and all the people in it. Let's see, I have to do my sign off. Thank you all for listening and have a great day. Yeah, all of you, take care, be good, and remember the best revenge is to just lead a good life. When people are just not worth dealing with, shake the dust off your feet and walk away. And by the way, pray for your enemies. It will drive them nuts. And it's good for you.